gives me great pleasure to welcome you here again. This particular series, as I've mentioned in previous weeks, perhaps more than any other, speaks to the heart and soul of our community. The amazing organizations, their dedicated staff, their volunteers who perform acts of kindness in a way that gives dignity to so many members of our Jewish community is something that certainly deserves to be highlighted. As I've mentioned, the theme of the series is Chesed. Olam b'chesed yiboneh, the world needs Chesed to continue to endure. Chesed needs to be, is required to be second nature, so to speak, to the Jew, almost a knee-jerk reaction. Avraham Avinu teaches us this again and again and again. So right from the very beginning of the Jewish people, we are taught this lesson. It's interesting to note, though, that in Parashat Vayera, the second verse of the parasha, the Torah teaches us, Vayisa einav vayar v'inei shlosha anoshim netzovim olov, vayar vayoretz likroso. That Abraham looked up and he saw three men standing near him outside of his tent. He was looking for visitors, he was looking for guests, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the opportunity to have these guests. And the Torah teaches us that he looked up and he saw these three guests. And immediately after the Torah tells us that he looked up and he saw these three guests, the Torah tells us again that he saw a second time, and this time he ran forward and he bowed towards them and he welcomed them into his tent. And the question that is asked by the commentaries is, why does it tell us in the Torah that Abraham looked twice? Surely once would be sufficient, especially in line with the fact that Chesed should be a knee-jerk reaction. There shouldn't be too much thinking. You've got to do what you've got to do, and it should be almost a natural inclination of a person to react in such a way. Yet the Torah seems to teach us that Abraham, who was all about Chesed, still when he did Chesed, for a brief moment, even if it was just a brief moment, he stopped to think, what is the appropriate course of action? What is the actual need over here that I can provide? The lesson is simple. As opposed to looking at Chesed as an opportunity to project one's own needs upon the other, real Chesed begins in identifying what is the need in the other, and then the question is, can I satisfy that need? In the context of the CSO, a most remarkable organization, I can safely say with certainty, it's beyond a challenge. You know, most other organizations are able to tell everyone what it is exactly that they do, what is the need, what is the want, what is the risk, what is the satisfaction, what do they do, what don't they do, etc. This organization cannot, for obvious reasons. Yet I can safely say that first and foremost, they are, even though it's strange on some level to say it, a Chesed organization. Secondly, I can safely say that they identify the real needs of the community. They look after the real needs of the community, but in a way of such tznius, in a way of such modesty, both for security reasons and because it represents who these individuals truly are. Before I hand over, there's a remarkable lesson that is really relevant to you and I and each of us, every single member of the community, and not just those who volunteer for the CSO and other organizations like it. Rav Soloveitchik teaches, quoting from a pasuk, a verse from Megillat Esther that we read on Purim, where Mordechai says to Esther, in encouraging her to accept upon herself the responsibility of the broader Jewish community. And when Mordechai encourages her, he says to her, do not imagine that you will be able to escape in the king's kingdom, in the king's palace, any more than the rest of the Jews who are found outside of the palace of the king. And Rav Soloveitchik teaches from here, as do Chazal, that when it comes to the concerns of the Jewish people, when it comes to the concerns in particular relating to the safety of the Jewish community, no individual of the community should think to themselves, I'm safe where I live, this is not my concern. Says Rav Soloveitchik, it's an obligation that one can draw its source from this verse in Megillat Esther that speaks to each and every single one of us, bearing the responsibility and taking to heart the tremendous responsibility that is the safety of the entire Jewish community. We need to take this task extremely, extremely seriously. That being said, to reiterate, our hope through this general series, and certainly tonight as well, is to highlight, number one, recognition and gratitude for the tremendous dedication and commitment, which certainly is very much due. Number two, that through recognizing all that is being done, what is being done, we ourselves, the participants, the viewers, can please God inspire each other to do a little bit more. Everyone can make a difference. We all need each other, but most importantly, everyone can make a difference. The Base and Soul presents a special 5-part series, one-on-one talks with people leading the organizations that support, serve, and save the Jewish community. Tonight, the CSO, Gelbart Jevon Greenblatt, interviewed by Robin Smukler. With that, I'd like to hand over to Robin.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Aaron. And I do think it's a huge privilege to be on these. Just the fact that we have these organizers in our community, the fact that we have these people who share with us, and the fact that we have a full host of people who've tuned in tonight to want to understand more, to give more, to learn more, and to grow more. It's just a huge, huge privilege to be part of the Jewish community, the African Jewish community especially. To be interviewing CSO is a rare privilege, because they're people in the front lines, but they're always the people who are behind the scenes. And as the rabbi mentioned, everything is done. We know that they're there with force and with ready to take on anything that comes their way, but they always do it quietly, and we don't often get to hear the ins and outs of the CSO. So it's a privilege tonight to be hearing directly from you. So if I can add, so firstly, a good evening. And if I can maybe ask you just to give us an overview of the CSO's and some of the different programs and interventions that the CSO actually runs.
Thanks, Robin. Just a very brief thank you to Rav Aaron, the Base Soul, for inviting us to be part of this phenomenal program. As quite rightly noted in the introductory video, we're very often on the outside looking in, watching the Jewish community celebrating, dancing, having fun, doing chesed. But I think it's important to note that the vast majority of people in the CSO are volunteers themselves, and what they do is their form of chesed. And so thank you, Rav Aaron and the team, for recognizing something that we're here to present on their behalf. And really, Jevon, I think, are honored to be able to present on behalf of all the volunteers and all people who give up their time to help protect our community. And the question really is, well, what do we do and why do we do it? Well, the mandate of the CSO is to protect Jewish life and Jewish way of life. And as Rav Aaron just spoke about Esther in the Purim story, all Jews are Jews. We don't distinguish between if you're a good Jew, a bad Jew, if you go to shul, you don't go to shul, which shul you go to, which rabbi you speak to. All Jews are Jews, and our mandate is to look after each and every single Jew in the community. And we strongly believe that the best people to look after Jews are Jews. And so something you cannot replace is the Jewish neshama. And when you know that your family are standing behind you, your friends, the people you live with every day, your motivation to do what's important to keep them safe is higher than anyone else in the world. And so our job is really to inspire, to empower, and to give people a reason to do and keep each other safe. I think we'll discuss whether we need to do that or not another time. But for now, I just want to say we all live in a beautiful country. South Africa is a great place. We've got great weather, great people. We're all doing phenomenal things, and we want to stay here. And it's important for the CSO to stay and look after each and every one of us in our environment. We work with other security companies, with the police, with authorities. We make sure that we are an integral part of the community without leaving our community behind. Our main role really is to, as I said, empower our community. We train protectors to keep us safe. We train researchers to monitor our environments. We train control room personnel staff to keep a 24-hour control room. We train private security industry guards from private companies who stand at our schools, installations to make sure that they are well prepared to deal with whatever comes. We have a medical wing that deals specifically with terror medicine. We have great Hatzola who do phenomenal work looking after our community from that point of, from every other point of view. And we have some experts who look after what happens if there's an attack in our community. How do we deal with security and medical together? And we work very well with Hatzola, who are a great organization. We have Zaka, who deal with everything else, search and rescue, Chesed Showcase, and a whole host of other communal events, fire containment. That's so big for our community. Just so you know, we've got thousands of people who've done our courses, who are part of our training programs, who volunteer somewhere along the line, somewhere along their time in the community. And their training and what they do for us is ongoing all the time. What do we do, really? What is our role? Our role, first of all, is to prevent an attack from ever happening. And that's the hard part, because most of what we do, please God, we'll never see. Prevention is always better than reaction. And by stopping something happening, by putting the right systems in place to make sure that doesn't happen, is the most important thing that we can do. But, God forbid, should something happen, we need to deal with it. We need to efficiently and effectively stop this problem from escalating any further. And for that, we've got multiple trained people who work every single day, make sure that they're as well prepared as possible to deal with what they need to deal with. But when that does happen, that's going to have a massive effect on our community. Unfortunately, lives may be lost, people will be injured. We need a cleanup. We need people to deal with that. We need to deal with the emergency. We need to deal with the immediate aftermath. And then finally, we need to deal with how we get back to our life as a community. What do we do to get back to that place? And so in a real short nutshell, summarizing what thousands of volunteers do, this is probably what our mandate is. I didn't add on top of that just because we have the abilities. We find missing people all the time. People go missing in our community, people find our control room, and we help to repatriate them to their families as often as possible. We do quite a few of those as well. So I'll leave it there for now. I'm sure we'll discuss more as the evening goes on.
So thank you, Brad. I think already that is very informative, because a lot of people see the CSO just as standing outside schools and maybe standing outside schools and functions. So to understand that you actually run this 24/7 operation is maybe news for some people. So Jevon, if we could ask you to maybe just explain some of like how the cogs in the wheels work. So how does this call center work, and this 24/7, like how can they engage, and on what levels should they think to engage with the CSO, if it's after hours, or for what kind of emergency reasons would they reach out?
Robin, thank you. And once again, thank you to yourself and Rabbi Aaron and Moshe for inviting us. To just reiterate what Brad said, we have this beautiful, amazing Jewish community that I think is revered around the world. And it really is a great privilege and honor to play a part in, just a small part in protecting that community and allowing it to be the beautiful community that it is. And I guess to a certain degree, a light unto the nations. So thank you for this opportunity. As Brad mentioned, and he spoke about a lot of the things that we do, not to take away, and we talk about protecting shuls and schools and day-to-day life of our community. And thank God we have such an amazing, vibrant community that operates 24/7, 365. There's never a moment, there's never a time, whether it is a shul, whether it is an event, whether it is a simcha, whether it is a restaurant running, there's communal life running at all times. And it's obviously our responsibility to ensure that we not only protect the community, but we empower the community to protect itself as well. as we've seen anywhere in the world. No matter where you are and no matter what the resources are, every human being, every person needs to take responsibility for themselves. And then we provide the resources and the backup and the systems that support that and support our community. It's important to mention, of course, the thousands and thousands of man-hours and mostly volunteers that are protecting our shuls and our schools and day-to-day life, which does go unnoticed to a certain degree because they're there every single Shabbos and every single day and every single year, year in and year out. And, you know, often people joke about the youngsters with the sunglasses and the earpieces in the background, but the role that they play is so critical and people don't recognize that role gives the community a subconscious kind of comfort to be able to send their children to shul, to go to shul themselves, to feel safe in an environment where we should feel safe, but unfortunately in the world which we live in today, shouldn't be taken for granted. So obviously most of our work and the primary function of our work is to ensure that our shuls are safe and secure. That's during the week, that is on Shabbos and Chagim, that our schools are safe and secure every single day when parents drop their kids off, to allow us to look after your children throughout the school day when the parents come to pick up the kids for after-hour activities and things like that. And then after that, obviously our community goes out to do shopping, to go to restaurants, to live life, to live this amazing, vibrant life that we're living. And there's a huge amount of work that goes into ensuring that those facilities are as safe and secure as possible, that we are empowering, whether it's the waiters, the restaurant owners, the shop owners, the security guards that work for other companies, to protect those. So what we have put into place, obviously, is a very, very powerful training mechanism that empowers our community from the most basic awareness, understanding what's happening around you, all the way through to much more advanced training, where we're training our community to actually react to, God forbid, an incident that should happen. And more importantly, as Brad mentioned, that we can actually prevent that incident from happening in the first place. 90%, 99% of things that do happen in the world, when you look back at them, could have been prevented by awareness, understanding your environment, putting the right mechanisms and processes in place. And we work very, very hard with our community and our volunteers to ensure that those processes are put in place. So we are proactively preventing something from happening. We often say that once we have to react to something, a number of things have led to that failure. It's already a failure. So much can be done to prevent it from happening. And that is from, people think that it's like well-trained volunteers that can do that. But 9 out of 10 times, it's an aware community member that phones through to our 24-hour control room, that reports something. There's a suspicious person outside a shop. There's someone that's acting suspiciously. There's someone that's done something that I don't know what it is. I just feel uncomfortable about it. And we go and either send our response teams. We have volunteer response teams that get up, they leave their families in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night. They walk out of meetings. These are business people, students, a family, men and women, that just drop everything, depending on the severity, to go out and deal with it. And sometimes it is as simple as going and questioning somebody outside a facility and saying, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" And if that person did have nefarious intentions, 9 out of 10 times, just by being there and questioning them and showing them that we know that they're up to something, has done most of the job of preventing them from doing anything further. They'll go somewhere else. So one of the big things, besides the shuls and the schools and our amazing volunteer teams, thousands of volunteers that you don't see but are out there rolling through, doing hundreds of thousands of volunteer hours every single year to protect you. We have our response teams that rush out to anything, from something that turns out to be nothing to something that turns out to be something important, or something where they don't even know the impact that they've had, but it actually may have prevented something from happening. So those are our response teams that go out and deal with those things. We have our 24-hour control room, which is manned by a small group of, I would say, youngsters. They really are. And these are people that get to, sadly enough, sometimes deal with very serious, very painful, very, I suppose, emotional kind of incidents that happen. And these are, once again, the most amazing youngsters that have stepped in. Although they are full-time employed by the CSO, they give so much more than what they earn. They give their hearts, their souls, to answer those phones, to get the right support to you, no matter what it is, whether it's a medical emergency, whether it's activating one of our other organizations, our partner organizations in the community, whether it's sending our response team, whether it's just being, I've listened to these youngsters sitting there listening to someone for 45 minutes while they're talking about their personal issues in life, etc., etc. They're the most amazing young group of people that are there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The control room is never not manned, and it's a team of 6 people that do this. Over Tavim, they send the right resources, they have the training, they're training all the time to make sure they're as effective as possible. And from that point of view, just so that I can put it out there, the emergency control room number is 086 18 000 18. So 086 Chai 000 Chai. And you can phone that control room for anything and everything in an emergency. Obviously, you have your security company, you have others, there's the police that we work with, etc., etc. But if you can't think of another number, phone that number. We will get the right resources to you, whether it is our team, our security teams, our response teams, our Ezra medics, whether it is to get Hatzola to you, we will speak to them, whether it is to get CAP to you, or whether it's to get the police. We will do whatever it takes. So if that's the number that you have to remember, please remember that number. On top of that, we have our young community security guys. They're called IROs, immediate reaction officers. These are the youngsters that you see standing outside some of our schools and shuls in CSO uniform. They often work for 9 hours a day in the beating sun or the freezing cold of winter or the rain, making sure that the gates of our schools and our shuls are protected. They wear heavy equipment. They are exhausted and tired by the end of the day. And we have those guys that kind of back up and work together with our community volunteers. And then we have a number of other systems, and I won't go into too much there, but if there's a crime incident in the area where there is community active and running around and shopping and schooling and shuls, etc., we have systems and things where we activate our resources, maybe not to the incident itself, which may be being dealt with by CAP or one of the other security companies, but immediately to go and protect all the surrounding facilities, our shuls, our schools, our restaurants, our shops, where Jewish life is happening. And we activate those systems. And once again, mostly manned by volunteers that drop everything to rush out there to protect their community. And that's just a little taste. I can speak for hours and I'm not going to. That's just a tiny little taste of what we do 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Brad spoke about missing people. Anything from, God forbid, a kidnapping or a hijacking, thank God, not too often, all the way to my son, my daughter, my mother, my father hasn't returned home from work. And thank God to today, we deal with about 20 to 30 of those a year. And thank God to today, we have a 100% success rate in finding people's loved ones and returning them home. So those are just some of the small things that we do every single day. And really, kol hakavod to our volunteers and to my staff. I have 20 staff and thousands of volunteers that are dealing with this stuff every single day. They are phenomenal.
Wow, that is truly phenomenal. And I think we're all learning a huge amount tonight. We often see, you know, just the men in their big black jackets. So it's unbelievable, all the things that you have going on. I know that we have a short...
women, Robin, I must say that the women make up just as important a part of this organization.
I've done the course, so
there we go. So now you know.
So if we can, maybe, Moshe, we can just show the video of the CSO and all the amazing things that you have going on there.
A group of amazing people doing amazing things every single day.
As much as I'm looking after my family, I'm looking after other people's families and other people's children at school, and they're doing the same for me when it's not my turn.
Where they are and where they're hoping to be in the future.
We are blessed by Hashem as the South African Jewish community to have the most remarkable organization in the CSO that ensures that we can live our lives as Jews in South Africa with pride and with vibrancy in our schools and shuls, and express what it means to be a Jew out in the open, to celebrate it and to live full, vibrant Jewish lives, because we have the security which is provided by the CSO.
The CSO is the community, and the community is the CSO.
Brotherhood and family.
And that is so important, but the CSO cannot do this work on their own. They are made up of an organization of dedicated volunteers, but also professionals. And we know in this world to be able to do anything with excellence requires financial resource to make it all possible. And so we have to partner with the CSO. As the Jewish community, we cannot take them for granted.
As a CSO, I believe that we bring the community together.
We are here to ensure that our community can continue to thrive in a safe and secure environment.
Kol Yisrael arayvim zeh lazeh. There's no better way to show how Jews care for each other than the way that our CSO volunteers look after our families, our communities, our children at school, and provide us with safe, secure, nurturing environments where we can enjoy our beautiful Jewish way of life.
It really is inspiring to learn and to see everything about the organization. Jevon, if I can just ask you, I think what's on a lot of people's minds is during lockdown, so obviously we had a lot less communal functions, events when schools were closed, but in the country there was a lot more, we saw a lot more violence in general, we saw bottle stores being looted. What was the CSO's approach during that time and also post-lockdown? Where's your focus been the last few months and where's your focus going forward?
Thanks, Robin, and it's a great question. COVID has obviously been quite a unique time for our community, and I guess you can go as large as to say for humanity as a whole. As an organization, I think our world is so consistently shifting and changing. So as an organization, we have to be exceptionally adaptable. We never know what is going to come, when it's going to come. We never know when a new organization that may be a threat to the community is going to arise. We deal with one element of a concern, a threat to the community. And then as you see, excuse me, around the world, a new old thing arises, which is maybe something like the right wing re-emerging, or a radical left wing re-emerging. So as an organization, we have to be very, very adaptable. We have to shift, we have to change. We never know what a day is going to look like. And by the end of the day, all your plans went out the window and you did something totally different because that's what was required. And I think COVID was no different. Very, very quickly, as kind of we were understanding what was emerging, and as, you know, the world and then the country kind of was starting to go into lockdown and we were understanding what was going on, the first thing was to understand that cool minds were required because there was an immense amount of panic. And I have to give a large portion of that credit to Brad. when we were all kind of looking at what was coming out of social media and fake news and all the stories and not understanding what was real and what wasn't real, we had to very quickly understand what was relevant and how we could continue to operate and protect our community. As we've seen, not just crime and violence in South Africa, which I suppose is a natural kind of reaction to something like a lockdown and all the other things that are happening. The rise in anti-Semitism around the world was often of massive concern. And unfortunately, with social media, we're no longer in a world that has boundaries and borders. It's a reality, and social media, there's so much good in it, and there's so much ability to communicate and connect and talk. I mean, look at us now on Zoom, talking and discussing community organizations and things, but at the same time, it's kind of broken boundaries and borders that would have protected us to a certain degree. So what is happening in the States and what's happening in the UK and in Israel and the Middle East and around the world has a direct effect on us here, and the anti-Semitism that we're seeing there, although thank God is much lower in South Africa, is of concern. And what we've been doing is preparing, because like anything else, we have to understand what is happening somewhere else, and we have to understand whether that has the potential to come to our borders and our shores. And when there is an incident that happens overseas or an event or a rise in anti-Semitism, we analyze it. So our teams have been sitting, analyzing, understanding it, as they do with every event. And we try and understand what the effect of it is on us in South Africa. We generally say that South Africa, whatever happens in the Northern Hemisphere, we're 6 months behind. So we've kind of got this beautiful lead to understand what's going to happen. The Northern Hemisphere gets taken by surprise, and we have 6 months to plan and prepare because we can watch what they're doing. So we were prepared. What we obviously did when we went to lockdown, which was quite severe, is we divided Joburg up into its regions. There was obviously quite a severe, I suppose, shutdown in movement, which meant that our volunteers were limited in their ability to move around. In one way, there weren't schools and shuls to protect, but in another way, there was still Jewish life going on. There were still community members that had to go out and shop. And what we did at that stage, especially during hard lockdown, was we started putting patrol vehicles out on the roads. We noticed that there were certain days in the weeks and times during that hard lockdown where now there were suddenly queues of people standing outside restaurants or shops, etc., that needed to be protected. So we put our patrol vehicles out, we sent our personnel out there. We also had to preempt possibly what could happen. Would there be civil unrest? Would there be kind of, people coming into our areas, as you mentioned, with the looting of bottle stores? Would that be at a much higher level where they were hitting supermarkets and shopping centers, desperate for food and resources and things like that? And our community members were in those shopping centers, shopping, living life, trying to, make the best of a really bad situation. So we had to kind of have teams that were ready to react, respond to those incidents should they happen. We had to change our kind of understanding and training to a certain degree, although we do understand the concept of civil unrest. The concern was at a different level. So we had to train our volunteers to understand that as well. We had to get all the permits. Obviously, we're a registered security company. I think it's very important to mention that. We are a registered security company. We operate as a registered security company. We had to get the permits out to our volunteers to allow them to move around during the day, allow them to respond and react to incidents. There was still suspicious activity. There were still concerns and things like that. So we had those processes in place. And then obviously there was a concern around things like, and thank God it didn't materialize in the end, but not understanding what COVID would do and how it would affect us. We weren't sure if we were going to have police on the streets. if they were all going to get sick and there was going to be no policing. We weren't sure whether our fellow security companies, because they were out and about patrolling and doing their job, whether all their officers would get COVID and would be booked off, and now there would be this vacuum of security in and around our community. So we prepared these processes where we had teams, we had volunteers. We asked our volunteers if we should need you to go into the streets of Joburg, specifically in the areas where our community kind of lives and shops and life happens, to start taking on those roles as volunteers. And hundreds of our volunteers stood up. So we put this massive system in place where if we needed to take over the role, God forbid, of patrolling our streets and protecting our community from both terror and anti-Semitism, but crime as well, which is not normally our mandate. And thank God we have amazing partner organizations that do amazing work in that sphere. We had to get ready to deal with that. And then obviously our volunteers were fearful themselves. They have families, they have children. Many of them live with their parents, comorbidities, etc., etc. So now could we put two volunteers in a vehicle together? We had to get them equipment at a time where there was no PPE, protective equipment. We were struggling to find masks. We couldn't even find simple things like sanitizer. We forget what 5 months ago was like, scrambling to get the equipment so that our protectors were prepared and ready. And God forbid, there really was an incident. I believe every single one of our volunteers would have forgotten about health, their own personal health, as they do whenever they go on duty. They put their lives forward to protect the community. I believe they would have done that. But our responsibility was to ensure they had the right equipment to go out there, the right knowledge of how to protect themselves. We know how to protect ourselves from the enemy we can see, from the threat we can see. But this was something totally new and no one understood that. So we had to do the best things. And then the last thing, as an organization, and they say this for many organizations like ours, if you're not working, you must be training, else you're kind of losing your skills. So we had to find a way to consistently keep our volunteers upskilled, to keep them as best as possible trained, focused on the mission that they had, focused on this constantly changing dynamic and environment and world around us. So we had to find new technologies and ways. Zoom was one option, but obviously there's certain things that we have to do where we were concerned about the security of a Zoom training session. So we had to constantly find new ways to interact, train, and even once it opened up a little bit, to bring small groups of our volunteers to our training facilities to continue upskilling them so that they can continue to go out there and be as skilled as possible. There's much more to say, but I'm going to stop now.
That's amazing. I think lockdown for us was something that made us all, the big word is pivot, but I think for CSO, that's probably how you roll on an ongoing basis. It seems like you always have to keep your eye on the ball, and it seems that you do that with precision. So hopefully you'll keep going forward with strength. It's amazing, someone's commenting here on the chat that they were part of the CSO fundraiser and they've never experienced such like brotherhood and community that they saw that happening there. They said amazing connection and volunteering. And it seems like people don't just give their time, but they give their entire being to protect and to passionate about Jewish life. So that's quite amazing. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Brad, maybe if we can ask, often we don't know what we have until it's gone. So we take a lot of things for granted, and we just take for granted that we see the guy standing outside Shul's, and we take for granted there. I hope we never have to imagine this, but what would happen? What would the community look like without the CSO, if we could paint that picture?
That's a great question, Robin. I think it'll be either very relaxed or very scared. And I think, without a CSO, if there's no need for a CSO, we could all be living very happily and getting on with life. Or we could be scared because we know it's out there and there's no one standing outside looking after us, or we having our lacquer party and l'chaim inside. And so it's a very challenging question, that, because we've had that discussion with a lot of schools at one stage many years ago when we were debating on how to protect the schools. And for a long time, there was a discussion that by having more security made people feel more scared. And so they weren't interested in coming to school. There was talks of sending kids to other schools, not Jewish day schools, because the schools didn't want the parents to think that children were more at risk by being at a Jewish school. But once we got our processes in place, and once we understood that actually our school and our place is the safest place to be for a Jewish person and Jewish kid, the mindset changed and the community bought into that. And our Jewish schools became far more of a place to be. And therefore, we look at the CSO not as someone to scare you to not be what you want to be, but to empower you to safely go and do what you want to do, to be Jewish, to party, to be Zionistic, to be not so Zionistic, to want to support, to not support, just to do what you want to do in whatever way you want to do it. And please God, Mashiach will come, we won't need a CSO, we can all sit and we can have a l'chaim and we can relax. But for the time being, unfortunately, we need to be here. We need a CSO, we need a strong CSO, and I thank all our volunteers and everyone who helps us do what we do.
Amazing. I think that you did get that right, and that instead of making people feel scared, you do make us feel safe. So thank you for that. Jevon, just to go back to women protectors, I know I was called from the CSO to do the course, the advanced course, and I said to the person who phoned me, like, no, I'm very much not a violent person, and I'm not a fighter, and I'm like, love peace. And she's like, just come and meet me and let's talk about it. And I went and I did land up joining the course. And I was completely taken off guard how empowering it was. Instead of being like this militant fighting, it was very much about de-escalating situations, as you mentioned, and very much about protection. And it was such an empowering experience. So maybe you can tell us, you know, in terms of how people can get involved if they want to do the course, but just in terms of, you know, just general protection, how can we as a community open our eyes more to protect ourselves and to protect each other by being a little bit more empowered?
Yeah, thank you. I think that it's very important to know, and I think many people think that of the CSO and the courses and the guys doing security and the heavies or the not so heavies or whatever else it is, that people that get involved in security are the violent ones or the ones that like firearms or like fighting or whatever else it is. But the truth is, and I think this is true for any real kind of security force anywhere in the world, whether it's a military, whether it's an organization which is protecting the community, by the community like us, the people that are the best and the most powerful are the people that are lovers, the people that love peace, the people that love others, that love their families and friends. And there's so many stories around the world, and when we do the courses and things, we do talk about it, of a mother protecting a child and finding strength within herself that she or no one else thought was possible. A mother lifts a car off a child that does the most phenomenal feats, whether it's a father or mother, and that comes out of love, not out of being a heavy and loving guns and all that kind of stuff. So we want everybody to get involved. And in fact, if you are somebody who is linked to the community, a peacenik in the positive way, somebody that doesn't see yourself as the biggest soldier, the biggest fighter, the biggest gun fanatic, whatever else it is, you're just as much who we're looking for as anyone else, because you will fight for your family, you will fight for your friends, you will fight for your community at a level that is beyond and we often get taken by surprise. And you know that when we do the courses, it's often the person that starts the course and everyone goes, yeah, that person will never make it through. That turns out to be the strongest, the best, the most dedicated. And the person that comes with all their muscles and all their bravado, et cetera, is the one that kind of like is average and runs through the course. So we want the mothers, we want the fathers, we want the people that love their community, and we want the people that are going to commit to the Jewish life and Jewish way of life. I think we can do so much to protect our community. And there was a survey done in the States a couple of years ago, and it was kind of run over 2 years. And they said that of all the terrorist attacks in the United States during that, I think it was 2017 and 2018, or 2016 or 2017, it was a very, very heavy year for attacks on civilians, etc. during that year in the States. They said that a minimum of 50, if not slightly higher, 50% were foiled by community members, not the army, not the military, not the police, not the soldiers, not the trained, but community members. Anything from I've reported somebody's acting in a bad way, or I'm not comfortable with the way this person at work is behaving or treating others, all the way through to I saw something suspicious outside a shop, never just driving past something or walking past something and saying that makes me feel very uncomfortable, I'm going to ignore it. So the first and foremost is that civilians are probably the greatest power. Community members, they understand their environment, they understand what should and shouldn't be there, they understand what fits in and what doesn't, they understand what is right and what is wrong, what looks right, what feels right. And they're the ones that if you've got that gut feel, phone it through to our control room, phone it through to us and let us know there's a guy standing, there's a girl standing, there was a car that drove past, I'm not feeling comfortable, there's someone at work that said something to me that makes me feel that there's something else going on there. And we can investigate that, have a look at it, we can send our response teams out to investigate it, and we can deal with it from that point of view. So being aware of your surroundings is number one. Being able to report, caring enough, don't just carry on with your life because life is busy. If you see something, say something, do something. That's our motto, okay? And that could be anything from phoning through to our control room, walking up to the person or going to the shop owner or the security guard and saying, that person's doing something strange. At shul, that person, I saw someone around the corner, I'm not comfortable with them. Could you please go and check it out, etc. I'll come with you. So that's number two. We ask of our community to do duties at shuls, and this is also non-trained community members or less trained community members because they fit into the bigger picture. So we've got parents that do duty outside schools. Some of them are highly trained, some of them are slightly less trained. The same thing with shuls. We have our trade guys that have done our courses, that have done anything from awareness courses to advanced courses. We have community members that are just come outside and stand their duty with the more kind of trained guys, because awareness is just as important. As I said, 99% of things can be prevented by just being aware of your environment. So please stand up, do your duty at shul, volunteer to get onto your shul security team. Volunteer. When you are asked to do your parent duty at school, don't just ignore it, or I've got a busy day, or I'm going to, try and get out of it or find someone else to do it. Go and do it yourself, and do it like it is your child that you're protecting, because that is exactly what it is. Understand that you've got the backup of our ROs and the more trained guys there, but your role is so critical in just being aware. God forbid something happens, in just getting the kids down and inside, or the community inside. Every single person has a skill, and every single skill can play into what we need to do. They say that, by the way, women are much better shots than guys, so much more accurate. So, women are often much more aware of what's happening around them than guys are. So even if you're not trained to the nth degree, if you can pick something up that the guy standing at the gate or whatever else it is with all his equipment ready to react doesn't see, you play such a critical role in preempting, God forbid, something happening over there. Learning to protect your family and your friends. Whether you go and do a self-defense course, whether you go to martial arts, whether you go and do Krav Maga somewhere, where you do an anti-hijacking course. We run a course called Body and Mind, and unfortunately this year, because of COVID, we haven't been able to run it. But it's just a course to make people aware of what's happening around them. And we have 5 or 6 scenarios where people who have done our courses prevented hijackings from happening, prevented some horrific event from happening to them because they were so much more aware and had the confidence in themselves to do something, anything, but to do something proactive about that kind of thing. And then, of course, Robin, like what you did, to come and do our courses. Our courses are intensive. They are worth the time. They're probably amongst the best training you'll get from anyone, anywhere in the world. Our volunteers are highly trained. And it just gives you such a different outlook on life, not only from a skills point of view, but all those limitations, Robin, that you thought you had, suddenly you get pushed past those boundaries and you realize those boundaries are nothing. And it makes you realize what you are capable of doing. So do our courses. Obviously, if you're going to do our courses and we're going to invest, it's hundreds of hours from volunteer instructors and logistics, etc. Then we're going to want you to give back by standing shul duties, doing school duties. Our youngsters go away. They give up their December holidays. Can you think of an 18-year-old that would give up a weekend with their friends on the Joel or their December holiday in Thailand or wherever people go these days to protect thousands of children at summer camps? It is the most phenomenal thing. But this is what our people do, and they do step up. So get in touch with us. I have got some email. If you want to send an email, if you want to find out more, you can send an email to info@cso.org.za. You can phone our office on 0860, so 0860-276-276. You can go to our webpage, which is cso.org.za. And there will be contact details on there if you want to do courses, you want to get involved. And then we also have a Facebook page called Community Security Organization, CSO Johannesburg. So you can go to all of those. You can touch base with us. And then I suppose the most important thing for schools and shuls, for events, make contact with us. Let us know you're having an event. Get in touch with us and say, help me set up my shul security team. And I'm not talking about one volunteer who's kind of like being lumbered with the job of doing that. I would like the chairman of the shul or the school to phone me and say, this is important to us. This is critical to our community and to our families and to our the charges in our under our responsibility. Come speak to us. Come build a program with us. Let's protect it. Let's get the right people, the volunteers. Come train us. Come advise us on what walls to build, what processes to put in place, how to train our private security guards to look out for the threats that we face, to prevent the God forbids that we have seen everywhere else in the world. And I'd just like to say as well that I've got a number of calls from communities in the States. In the States, specifically New York, but other places, over the last 2 years, they've had a really rough time, the Jewish community. But if you saw what happened in New York last year, especially over December period, December, January, attacks, anti-Semitism, etc., we got so many calls from communities around the States saying, just talk to us about what you have. If only we had been proactive like the South African Jewish community and not reactive, scrambling now. So please, God, we continue to put the effort, the time, the funding into doing what we need to do, and we never need it rather than, as we see around the world, that they need these kind of infrastructures, but they haven't got it set up, they haven't got the infrastructures in place to deal with it. Let's be proactive rather than reactive.
Thank you so much. I think it's empowering to live in a country like this and realize how much is in our hands, actually. You know, often people live in fear, and here you're giving us all an opportunity to step forward and to take control, and it's very empowering. So thank you for that. Brad, maybe if we can just wrap up, if you have any final things to just share or any messages to the community.
Thanks, Robin. It's a good thing we only gave Jevon 1 hour because he's so passionate and he runs the organization so well. He could talk for days. And I know that he's only really touched the surface of what we are able to do for our community. But the truth is that every facet of our community is so important. And that's why this series by The Base and Soul is phenomenal. And we're not any more important than anybody else. But we're an organization that's, as you quite rightly said, we stand behind the scenes, we empower people, we allow things to happen. We work hard throughout the years. Unfortunately, we're not like welfare or another organization where you can just throw some money today and tomorrow you can have a solution. The training takes time. The systems take time. We've built it over years. We need to make sure we put everything in place that when something happens, for that 20 seconds or 5 seconds that something happens, we are ready in the right place at the right time with the right equipment and the right training to do the right thing. Please God, we'll never be needed. But we never want to know. We don't want to find out too late. And therefore, the support to the community is so, so important. I always use the rugby analogy. I'm a rugby fan. And the Springboks train, rugby players play the whole life, their whole career for maybe 80 minutes to play in a World Cup final and win it. We are the world champions at the moment. In security, we got 7 seconds to life. And that's what you have. All your training, all your systems, everything you put in place is for those 7 seconds. So we need your support. We need the community to be part of us. We're part of you. We need to keep our training going. These things cost money. So we need money, right? Keep supporting us. Find a space in your Tadaka for us, somewhere on the line. And please God, we'll continue to be there and quiet and never heard from and never needed. So I haven't acknowledged Rob Katz, who's a great friend of the CSOs, who's in Cape Town today and part of his webinar. So thank you, Rob, also for getting us involved in Ariel for the work that you've done. Thank you, Robin, for giving us a platform to speak, and Rob Aaron and Moshe. And please, God, we won't have to be more in the spotlight than this. We can be quietly.
Amen. Thank you so much. I think what's so profound about the CSO is that your tagline is protecting life, Jewish life and the Jewish way of life. And I think you live that both with such passion, not just protecting, but allowing us to live as free Jews and to actualize all of that as a community. So thank you so much for all that you do and all of your volunteers, really like the heroes behind the scenes, not sleeping at nights and really going out line for all of us. So a huge thank you to the CSO, and may you continue from strength to strength. And as you say, may we not need it, but may you always be there when we do need you. And just a huge thank you to Rabbi Zolberg, to Moshe Zolberg, Ariel Weber, to Rob Katz in his absence. But I think this whole series is so much.
I'm actually here, Rob, so thank you.
Oh, how's it, Rob?
Hello, Rob, how's it?
How's Honeston?
Very, very nice, very nice.
So welcome to Rob, who's very critical in this series, who lives and breathes. And thank you to Rabbi Aaron, who brought everyone together. And it's just, the series epitomizes our community and the chesed of our community, just that there's no boundaries in what we can do when we come together. So thank you to Rob for joining, for Rabbi Aaron, for for having us partner you on the series, and to the CSO for all the amazing work that you do. I'll hand over to Rabbi Aaron.
Thanks, Robin, and well done. I certainly speak on behalf of everyone and the entire organizing group of this series, Soul, the whole base community, in fact, the whole Jewish community, when I say thank you to CSO for allowing us this opportunity. What you guys do is so important. The work you do, the work we see, plus the work we don't see, the tremendous dedication of each one of you. Thank you very, very much. In particular, I'd like to thank Brad Gelbart and Jevon Greenblatt for coming on this evening and giving of your time, but certainly not limited to this evening, but for all that you do, quite literally working day and night. Thank you very much. And Hashem should continue to bless you and your families and all those who work with you and their families, that they should all be safe, that you should be able to continue to do the most important work that you do and much more. There's certain acknowledgements, as Robin mentioned, that are most appropriate. And I want to mention, first and foremost, to Soul. I want to mention Kate Kershuni, Robin Smukler, Josh Sevith. Thank you, Robin, for taking the reins this evening and doing such a great job as always. But thank you to each one of you for this partnership and for all you do. As said, we are most excited to partner for the series, and please God, many more partnerships in the future. I want to also say thank you as well to Rob Katz and Tariel Weber for all that you guys do. The series really would not exist without your involvement. I also want to thank my brother Moshe for all that he does to make these webinars a reality. We could not do this without you. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Keep safe and have a good night.